Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Legend series. My name is Adrienne Harris, and I am sitting with a legend.
In my own mind.
Catherine Schuler is here, and we're going to shed some light. Our goal for this Bridal Edition Summit is to bridge the gap because currently there is a disconnect between high fashion and the wedding industry. So, in this segment, I'm going to have Miss Catherine share some information in terms of how Fashion Week got started. We hear all the buzz, we hear everyone talking about Fashion Week. But, Catherine, how did it get started?
In a nutshell, there was a woman named Eleanor Lampert, and she was the doyenne of ideas. She was a huge influence on many, many people, and she created the best dressed list. I mean, those kind of things were unheard of, and she thought, I'm going to elevate the industry to a standard that it's never been before. And she thought, let's do this. The Battle of Versailles was created because the Palace of Versailles had gone into rack and ruin, and it was a beautiful building, but it needed refurbishing. So she thought up this whole scheme of working with the French and doing a fundraiser. So the ticket sales would actually go towards refurbishing the Palace of Versailles. So they created this whole mystique about what was going to happen, and she created the event of all time. And it was Bill Blass. She invited Bill Blass. She invited Halston because he was the biggest designer in the 70s, the early 70s. This happened. She created. She invited Anne Klein as a woman. Stephen Burrows because he was black, and Oscar de la Renta because he was Spanish. So talk about diversity.
Exactly.
She really had nailed it right there. So they get over to France, and the French were not quite as welcoming as she had hoped. They wanted to win. They wanted to win the battle. So they didn't give them not even a place to rehearse. And you know Halston brought Liza Minnelli.
Yeah.
So Liza Minnelli was like, Halston, we're going to do this. We don't need we're going to do it in the street. We're going to rehearse in the street. So there's Liza Minnelli, Pat Cleveland, all the main, she invited all the hip happening models of the day. They were all out in discos.
Wow.
And brought that infusion of energy into the show. So they created this show, and Liza, she opened the number. Halston, was there. All the designers were there. So the French actually opened the show with the most boring 2 hours of tedious traditional runway that you ever want to see. And then the Americans came on. In 33 minutes,
Wow.
They revolutionized the runway as we know it today. It wasn't a straight runway. It was free-flowing, disco balls, all this energy of the American society at the time. And it made history. Bill Blass became the American sportswear designer. Halston was put on the map. Anne Klein, Oscar de la Renta, everybody was. Stephen Burrows was. Everybody had their moment in that show, and it was called the Runway Revolution. It was actually the American Runway Revolution, Versailles, 1973. And there's a movie that my friend Deborah Draper did, and you can actually see the documentary, and everyone came. The Princess of Monaco, Grace Kelly, Bianca Jagger, Mick Jagger, Andy Warhol. Everyone was invited.
Wow.
And they actually paid very, very good. I think the tickets were astronomical. And it was almost like the Met Gala. You had to be invited,
Yeah.
but then you had to buy the ticket. And they saved the palace. And that was the beginning of Fashion Week. That
Wow.
was what started it. Everyone thinks that IMG and CFDA created Bryant Park with those tents. It was a great idea.
Yeah.
It was Fashion Week as we know it, but it was just a way to consolidate the buyers running all over the garment district, placing orders, put them under one tent. That's what Fern Malice and CFDA and IMG thought to do.
But now we're right back to that. We're all over the place running around because it's
Exactly.
no longer under the big tent.
That's what happened after about 10 years over there in Bryant Park. CFDA IMG said, we don't need you anymore. We put you on the map as a park. Bryant Park said, you can go now. So they were looking and scrambling for a place to go. So they went up to Lincoln Center.
Yeah.
And they were up there for 5 years as Mercedes-Benz
yes.
Fashion Week. It went between Olympus Fashion Week and Mercedes-Benz, and then Mercedes-Benz took over the sponsorship. But they didn't have rights to anything but the stairs. So all those pavilions and all those structural tents were built on the park, and that was not allowed. So as soon as Mercedes-Benz was threatened with a lawsuit, they hightailed it out of there. And then CFDA and IMG spun it so that it was over. They were looking for a new space. So it got scattered to the winds. And that's actually how a company like High Tech Moda snuck in, because everybody thought they could come to New York and go to a fashion show, and it was only buyers and industry insiders and celebrities and editors who got invited. And the Fashion Week brings in $900 million to the city.
Wow.
And that's just people coming to try and get a ticket. So we capitalized on that and said, we're going to do a second tier, and we're going to do a very high-end fashion show. It'll be an independent designer fashion show, so you're not going to see Prenza Scholar, you're not going to see Badgley Mishka, you're not going to see Michael Kors. You're going to see independent designers, and it actually worked in our favor. So we're in season 6 now, and I have to thank Fern Malice and IMG, because when I went there in 2001, after the World Trade Center collapsed, I had a magazine, Mode, and I felt like I was the voice and the spokesperson for the plus size industry. So I created an event called 14 Plus on 6th. Fern Malice had actually entitled that Fashion Week 7th on 6th, because it was the 7th Avenue district on 6th Avenue where Bryant Park was. So I created an event called 14 Plus on 6th. It was a size, not a street. And she called me into her office. She said, I'm going to sue you. So my creative director, Darren Trentacosta, who we're going to have an interview with, he and I said, okay, we're going to rename it Curve Style Reshaping Fashion. And she actually did us a favor, because no one knows 7th on 6th now. No one would ever know that that was what it was originally titled. So it's a little bit of a condensation of the history, but I love Eleanor Lampert, Gloria Gelfand, Rachel Roth, Diana Vreeland, all those people when I came into the industry. They were still in existence, and Ruth Finley, the fashion calendar.
Yeah.
It was just it was such a, and those dames that knew their business. They revolutionized the fashion business. So I do kind of want to get back to that time, because I think there was much more creativity and much more entrepreneurial spirit. Eleanor Lampert lives on, and I kind of want to infuse her creativity and her event production mentality into what we're doing here with this, because there's always a niche. And she always said niches and reaches. So it's like, find your niche, and that's the jewel that you can polish, and that will be what determines your success. So I'm thrilled to be here and to be able to share some of the history and some of my journey through it as a plus size model in the 80s. And now it's all about diversity and inclusivity. So I think that I also want to do for Mother Nature what I did for the plus size woman. So I think that the plus size industry is It's by no means where it should be, but it's definitely come along, and she is now a fashion icon in her own right. And I think that, just the planet, the climate, zero waste, green, all that needs to be addressed now too. So,
Yeah, yeah.
and we're putting that into this summit too.
Exactly. Now you have heard a behind the real story from
That's
our
the real deal.
living legend. We hear about Bridal Fashion Week. Well, it started with Fashion Week, and you heard the entire story direct from Catherine Schuler. So we look forward to you joining us in our next Legend Series moment. Stay tuned.